Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so it's been a funny old year so far, and basically all I'm going to do now is just show you around the allotment and basically explain what I'm about to do with various things to, you know, sort of put it to bed for the winter. And that. So this is the first greenhouse. In here we've still got tomatoes growing. Obviously the plants are starting to die back now, but you will still have sort of tomatoes on. Now we've done really well with tomatoes this year. We've had 48 kilos of tomatoes out of this one greenhouse. I am still picking them, as you can see. They're still growing, but I stopped watering the plants around 2 to 3 weeks ago, so the plants will die off. This does tend to make the tomatoes a little bit tougher skinned, but they're fine for cooking. So what I'll do is I'll pick the rest of the tomatoes in the next week or two, and they'll be mainly used for you know, sort of cooking. You can eat them, you know, like normally, like in a salad or whatever, without cooking them, but the skins do tend to be a little bit tougher this year. Sorry, this time of year. So what you can do is, if you don't like the skin, obviously all the goodness in a tomato is actually in the skin, so all the vitamins and everything are in the skin. But what you can do, if you don't like to have the skins in your cooking, take the tomato off the plant and then drop it in boiling water, and you'll find that the skin will split, and then you can basically peel the tomato and you can take the skin off, just leaving the inner flesh. But as I say, I always leave the outer skins on, because that's where the vitamins and the goodness is. But basically this is what the first greenhouse looks like. The grapevine was cut back a few weeks ago. I didn't show a video on that, but as you can see, I've cut it right back. I've taken all of the sort of the side shoots out. There are still a couple still remaining which I left on because it was last, but all the leaves and everything have died back now. So what I'll do is I'll come in, take all these leaves out of the way, and then any other little bits and bobs like these at the top here that I couldn't get to before, I'll cut them back, you know, for the winter. But as you can see, there's still actually a few grapes on here. But you know, I'll wait for the rest of these leaves to go. As soon as you get a bit of frost, the leaves soon die off. But I'll be taking all of these out, so it'll just leave the bare plant in there, and that'll be all we need to do this time of year. And then that'll start growing back next year. So that's the grapevine. From the tomato point of view, what I'll be doing is taking all of these plants out, dispose of the plants. These will go into the green recycling, you know, for the rubbish. I won't compost these because you get, you know, you can get sort of fungus and stuff like that in there. Obviously blight is the main one, but I'll be taking all of these plants out and they'll be going in. This chickweed here, this is chickweed. I've left that in because I'll be feeding that to the chickens. But that's the tomato, so all of these will come out in the next few days. I've got some, as you can see, some sunflowers up here. I'll put them up there because the mice were trying to get at them, so I'll put them up there so they couldn't get to them. But these are all dry now, so I'll be able to save them seeds for the chickens. Right, and that's the first greenhouse anyway. So that's what the first greenhouse looks like. Right, so here we've got the celery. I must admit the celery's been really tough this year. It's grown well, but the actual stalks are really sinewy and really quite tough to eat. So the celery's not done very well this year, and I think what it's been down to, it's been well watered, but I think the heat, it didn't cope very well with the heat. But the celery's not been particularly successful this year. Just quickly looking back here, the herbs that are remaining here and up the side there, what I'll do is I'll cut them down to the ground. Obviously the definition of a herbaceous plant is a plant that dies down to the ground, and basically the plant itself, if you like, the bit that you keep, are the roots in the ground. So what I'll be doing is chopping all that off to the ground. I'll also be recycling that into the compost. There's a hollyhock there, which obviously was the big white one. That'll be cut down and shredded. But so all of this should be ground level before too much longer. And then the comfrey plant at the end there, I've already done the one this side. But this comfrey plant here, I'll be chopping all that back down to the ground, and then I'll be composting those leaves. So that's the herb side of things. Right, just moving around here. So we've got the asparagus here. So what I'll be doing with this is chopping all of this back and shredding it all, and then that'll go into the compost as well. The comfrey plants that were here, I cut these back last week. What I will be doing actually is taking these out, because they're a bit too aggressive to be here, to be honest with you. They tend to push the asparagus over. So what I'll be doing is digging all of this out, and I'll be planting some more asparagus plants there next year. That's easier said than done, because the comfrey roots tend to go down a couple of foot, so I need to dig it out as best I can. And then during the year next year, if they do come up, I'll just pull them out as weeds. But I'll be taking the comfrey out of there. Right, the raspberries are now dying back. We have had some raspberries over the last couple of weeks, in fact. But obviously now we've had the frost, they've sort of taken them. So what I'll do now is I'll cut all of these dead ones out over the winter, which is one of the jobs you can do. Cut all the dead ones out and then tie the new ones back into the framework, like I've shown you in the past. But that's basically the raspberries. The fruit trees here, this is the plum tree. Unfortunately, that died this year, so that will be coming out, and that'll be replaced at some point over the winter, or possibly the spring. The rest of them, like these, this is the josterberry bushes. I'll be tying these branches in and cutting the other ones back. In the middle here we've got the cherry trees. You can see there's loads of growth on the top of that. That'll be cut back. So all of these little spikes coming out, those will all be sort of chopped back. And then the apple tree at the end there, I'll be trimming that back as well. But what you need to do with the fruit trees is wait till they're dormant. Don't try to cut them whilst they're still sort of got sap in them, otherwise you'll send the tree into a mode where it just wants to grow and not fruit. So what you need to do is wait till they're absolutely dormant. So this time of year is ideal. Any time between now and February is the time to cut down fruit trees. But I'll be trimming them back and sort of tying them back into the framework. So those are the fruit trees. The strawberries I've not done anything with, to be honest with you. I am toying with the idea of moving these again. Because they've managed to develop some weeds in there. I've got a few different weeds growing through them, and it might be easy for me to move them from there back to possibly where the celery is, and over that patch over there where I had the onions this year. But you know, I may well move the strawberries from there. But basically, I've not done anything with those. I've taken a few runners off, but that's pretty much as it was before. Right now, this area here, this is where the potatoes were. What I've done is I've dug all the potatoes out. There are just a few over that far corner there I still need to dig out, but I've been putting all of the chicken manure, as you can see, there's a big pile there, and I've been dotting it round, so these will have a good amount of chicken manure put in there, and then all of this will be rotivated over as soon as it gets dry enough to do that. So all the potatoes are out now. The crop of potatoes this year has not been brilliant at all. I've had probably around less than a half of what I normally do out of the ground. There's been plenty of potatoes, but they've not been very big, and that's been basically a result of the dry weather that we had this year. But as I say, the potatoes are nice, but they're all quite small. They're all kind of just a bit bigger than golf ball size. But I'll have plenty of seed potatoes for next year. But anyway, that's the potato bed. As you can see, that's all been dug out. Right, and then in here, this is the first tunnel. Now this tunnel's going to move that way as soon as I've finished everything in here. Now the cauliflowers didn't really come too much, as you can see. Just one had a head on it, and that flowered. The brassicas here, these are the Calabrese. I basically did take some of the heads off these, but because of the weather, again, these have not been very good. So all of these will be fetched out. These are the kale plants, as you can see. They're abysmal, really. This is nowhere near what I normally grow, but it's just because of the weather being the way that it has this year. And then at the front here, we've got the remains of the turnips, which we've still been picking at, but there's still a few turnips in there. But all of this will go in the coming weeks, and then this tunnel, as I say, will move kind of that way. Right, so that's the first tunnel. Right, and then in between the two tunnels here, we've got the So these are all little brassica seedlings on the floor here. So this is where the kale used to be, and I'll let that go to seed. So I've got all these kale seedlings all over the floor, but they'll just dig in when I dig it over. So I've got the first part of the row here, I've got the spinach, which I'm still pulling at, and then we've got some celeriac making up the rest of the row there, which I'll be picking over the winter months. As you can see, the celeriac is growing really well, and as you can see, the actual celeriac is probably about that big right now. Not as big as it is normally, but as I say, it is, you know, because this weather we've had, it's been quite dry, and they've not developed as much as possible, but they are still nice. So I will be picking those in the winter months. That's one of the winter vegetables really. And then here we've got the parsnips. As you can see, they're starting to die back now, so they're pretty much as big as they're going to get. As soon as we've had a frost on them, obviously the frost turns the starch in the parsnip to sugar. So so the sweeter if you leave them in the ground till it's had a frost. So I'll be starting to dig these up in the next couple of weeks. I'm not expecting to be anywhere near as big as they are normally, again because of the weather that we've had this year. Even though they have been watered, you know, all of the vegetables are a lot smaller than they are normally. But I'll be starting to dig the parsnips up in the next couple of weeks for over the winter months. Okay, and in the second tunnel here we've got the beetroot, which is these two rows here. I've already finished these, so you can see the beetroot there. So they've grown really well this year, as you can see. We need to get all these up now and sort of start pickling them. And then this side here is the spinach. Again, unfortunately running to seed because of the weather we've had. It's all bolted, but I've been cutting the tops off. But we have been picking it, you know, we have been eating spinach all year. So we've done well with the spinach really, you know, considering the weather. But it's been a funny year this year with a lot of vegetables really. They've either done incredibly well or incredibly badly. But the spinach hasn't done too badly, but as I say, it's all running to seed like this now, so that shouldn't have happened till next spring really. But because of the heat, it's all kind of started to run to seed. But that's the spinach in the second tunnel. Right, the rhubarb in the next bit here, that's all died back now. So that all started to die back about 2 weeks ago. As you can see, that's completely gone now. And then in here, this is where we had the beans. All the beans have gone. I've taken all them down. Burnt the the remainder of the plants. I've left this chickweed in here because I'll be pulling this out for the chickens and that. And then just round here, so I'll just come over here so the wind's not stopping the microphone. Right, so this is the Colucco plant. So I will be digging these roots up. So the wind's blown this over recently. So what I'll be doing is digging that up there and getting the roots out of the ground. So all of the gourds that were here have all been taken up, and the plants have been burnt. And then the beans that were here have also been taken up and saved the seeds. So I'll show you that in another clip. But that's where the gourds were and the beans were. So all of that's gone now. I'm just moving up here. These are the last few potatoes here, but I'm not expecting too many to come out of there. But I typically leave a few in the ground for Christmas, so I've got some, you know, nice fresh potatoes at the ground. They tend to, if you can keep the potatoes in the ground, I find that they keep better. If you don't mind coming up and digging them out in the cold weather, but I find that if you leave them in the ground, they tend to store better in the ground rather than digging them up and putting them in sacks. And then obviously now we're on this side. This is the apple tree again. This will be sort of tied back and trimmed back in the next couple of weeks. And then this area here, this is where the onions, the spring onions were. As you can see, there's the last few there that we didn't eat. So I'm potentially planning to use this area for the strawberries next year. So what I'll do is I'll dig all this out and get all the weed out, and then potentially transplant the strawberries from there back into here where they were before. But obviously I need to make sure the ground is absolutely weed free before I do that. But anyway, that's that. And then the second greenhouse here, this is where all the peppers were. Obviously we've picked all the peppers now. There are a few jalapenos left, which I'll be picking. These are just drying off now. I don't think these are going to grow any more than they have already. But we picked a load of the jalapenos. They've all either been used or chopped up and frozen. and then all the sweet sweet peppers here, as you can see, some of them did go over, but the majority of them have been sort of picked and sort of used. But you can see the weed been growing in here. So what I'm going to be doing in the next few weeks is sort of clearing this out, and then getting the greenhouse ready for next spring. But this greenhouse, you know, obviously this is the one that we put up kind of this time last year. It really has paid dividends. You know, we've had a really good crop of peppers and that out. Now next year what I plan to do is to grow peppers in here again, but what I'm thinking of doing is actually growing the peppers in the ground, so down here. So take the surfaces out, then actually grow them into the borders on the ground rather than keeping them up here. I'm going to experiment and sort of grow them down there next year to see if they grow any better. But that's what the second greenhouse looks like, and that's the allotment. And I think we're on the 23rd or 24th of November today. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, now's the best time to get the asparagus seeds. Now what you'll see is the berries form. So these start off as being green, and then all you need to do is put your hand on the branch like that and pull them off, and then what you'll end up with is a load of these berries. Now inside each of the berries you'll see there's like 3 or 4 little black seeds. Now what I would recommend you do is just collect your berries like that, put them in a little tray, and you can dry them off in there. So just put your hand like that on the branch and then pull like that, and you'll see you get the berries off on your hand. And then you don't need too many, because obviously, you know, you get loads of seeds in each of these, but just pull off, I would say maybe 30 or 40 berries is more than enough, so that will give you around 50 seeds in there. And then if you've got a bunch of plants like I've got here, what I would suggest you do is take berries off multiple plants, just to make sure you've got good you know, variety of seeds, so you don't have them all off one plant, just in case there's a problem. So that what we've got there now is probably all you need. Now put them in the greenhouse to dry out. They'll turn brown, and then as soon as they turn brown, then you'll be able to get the seeds out. You can take them out as they are at the moment if you wish, just by squeezing them, and then you'll see like that one there, you can see in the middle of the screen, you get these little black seeds like that, and those are the bits that obviously you need, which is what you'll grow next year. But I'll just take a few more just to be on the safe side off here, and I'll take some more off a plant on the other side in a moment. But that's more than enough seed to grow some asparagus next year. Now you put those in the spring, put them in like a sandy soil, because asparagus like the ground to be quite well drained. And then after a year or so you can plant them up, and then you'll get little plants like this, and then as soon as you get to this point, then they'll be ready to plant out next year. So that's all you need to do with your asparagus seeds for now. Okay, so we're now in the third greenhouse. These are the bean canes. I just wanted to quickly put a note. Don't leave your canes outside, and you know, unless you've got no other alternative. Canes will rot very quickly if you leave them out over the winter. So you know, if you have got a shed or a greenhouse that you can store them over winter, keep them dry. That's most certainly the best thing to do. Now, bean canes should last you a good sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, possibly 10 years. If you leave them outside, I think within a couple of 3 years, you know, you'll be replacing them again. So what I suggest you do with any bamboo canes is keep them inside, keep them dry, and then they'll keep for a long time for you. Right, so that's the bamboo canes. These are the dahlias, and as you can see, what I've done is I've dug them out of the ground. They're now starting to get nice and dry, so what I've done is I've brought them in. Some of them are still shooting because the weather's still warm, but what I've done is I've brought them in out of the frost. What you don't want to do is get any frost on the dahlias. So I brought them in, put them on the side like this, so that they dry out, and then just watch out for any mould. Now this one here I've left so I can show you. As you can see, the sort of mould forming on there. What I would suggest you do is cut that off with some secateurs and get rid of that, because the mould will go down into the corms and cause you problems. But what you want to do most certainly before the frosts, or now if you haven't done already, is dig all the dahlias out of the ground, bring them into the greenhouse, put them on a tray like this and keep them nice and dry. and then as soon as they are nice and dry, you can put some bubble wrap over them and you know, keep them nice and warm for the winter. Try and keep them in a frost-free place. If you haven't got an absolutely frost-free place like myself, keep them in the greenhouse and just put some bubble wrap over them. You'll find that the daylight during the day will keep them warm enough to stop them from freezing at night, unless we have, you know, sort of prolonged periods of sort of cold. But that's the dailies. I've still got about half a dozen in the ground, which I'm going to be digging up in a moment. But as I say, now's the time to get the dailies out of the ground. Right, okay, onto the runner beans. As you can see, I've picked off all of some of the old runner beans. Now all you need to do is wait till they've dried like this, and then get yourself a little tray like this. Then you can store your seed for next year. All you need to do is just push the seed like that. Get your thumb into it, and then there's the actual bean there. So that's the bit that you want to store for next year. So that's what you'll be planting in the spring to grow your next plants. So wait till they're nice and dry like this. Put them in a dry place, and then you'll be able to get the seed out like that, and you'll be able to save the seed for next year. So that's all you need to do with the runner beans. Exactly the same thing with the string beans, as I've explained before. You know, sort of take them out of the shells. So I've got these drying and them drying there. So they'll be the beans for next year. For Calabrese, not for Calabrese, for calendulas, these are the orange flowers that we've got. These are the seeds that I've saved from the flower. So the flower head forms like a seed, and these are the actual seeds. So the seeds look like kind of that. So those are the seeds. So save yourself plenty of these, and all you need to do in the spring is what I do is I just cast these on the ground and just sort of rake them into the ground, so that, you know, they're within the first half an inch to an inch of soil, and then they'll grow away quite nicely. So those are the calendula flowers, which are basically part of the marigold. Okay, and finally, fuchsias. You'll find that if you're growing fuchsias in your greenhouse, I've just got this one here to show you. This is actually a hardy variety, but I've got it still in the pot. If you've got your fuchsias outside, what you can do now is, as soon as the leaves start to go yellow and that and start to fall off, cut it down to the ground and then cover over the plant with some mulch, you know, some other wood chippings or some, you know, anything that'll sort of protect the crown of the plant here from you know, from being damaged from the frost. If you've got them in the greenhouse, all you need to do is either reduce or stop the watering, so that the compost is nice and, you know, sort of dry. You want a little bit of moisture in there, but not too much. And then just allow the plant to die back, and then what I would do is leave the plant until the spring, and then when it starts to shoot from the stems, you can see where to cut it back to. That's what I would recommend you do with the fuchsias. Then obviously other plants, like these are the aloe vera plants. All I'm going to do with these now is put them into the house. Some of them will need repotting, but I'm going to put them into the house because these will not tolerate any kind of frost. So before the frost comes, you know, put them into the house where it's frost free, and then the aloe veras will carry on growing. If you leave them in the greenhouse, unless it's heated, if you leave them in the greenhouse, these will most certainly die over the winter. And most certainly, finally, the butternut gourds. Obviously, these have all dried out now. So what we do need to do now with these is take them into the house, because again, any amount of frost will start these rotting. So those are the last of the butternut squashes that we've not used yet. So what I'm going to do is take them down to the house, and then get them in the you know, like in a frost-free place, and then they'll store most certainly for 6 to 9 months. So I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.